I never thought I'd be the kind of person who looks forward to technical difficulties, but here I am, Wednesday afternoon, staring at my frozen screen with what I can only describe as anticipation, because I know what happens next. I know who's coming, and honestly, I might have unplugged my mouse 3 times this week just to make it happen. His name is Marcus. He's been our IT guy for about 8 months now, and I've learned more about network protocols and RAM specifications than I ever thought possible. Not because I care about technology, but because when Marcus explains something, he does it in this way that makes you feel like you're the only person in the world who matters. He takes his time, he's thorough, and God help me, I'm completely gone for him. It started innocently enough. My computer actually did crash back in March, a legitimate blue screen of death situation that had me panicking about a presentation due in 2 hours. I called the IT helpline expecting the usual remote login fix, but Marcus showed up at my desk instead. He was wearing this navy button-down with the sleeves rolled up, and he had this concerned expression that made my stomach do something unexpected. He asked if he could sit down, and I remember nodding like an idiot while he pulled up the spare chair. That's when I noticed his hands. I know it sounds ridiculous, but they were beautiful. Careful and precise as they moved across the keyboard, long fingers that seemed to know exactly what they were doing. He smelled like coffee and something woodsy, maybe cedar, and when he leaned in to look at the screen, I forgot how to breathe properly. The thing that got me, though, was how he explained everything. Not in that condescending way some tech people do, where they make you feel stupid for not knowing the difference between hardware and software. Marcus talked to me like we were collaborators solving a puzzle together. He'd pause and ask if I was following along. He'd use metaphors that actually made sense. And when he finally fixed the problem, he didn't just leave. He stayed for 10 extra minutes showing me preventive measures, his voice patient and warm, never once checking his watch or seeming like he had somewhere better to be. I thanked him probably 4 times. He smiled, this genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, and said, "Anytime, really, that's what I'm here for." Then he was gone, and I sat there staring at my perfectly functioning computer, wondering why my heart was racing over an IT ticket. After that, I started noticing him around the office. He'd walk by with his toolkit, always greeting people by name, always seeming genuinely happy to help. I learned that he brought in homemade cookies once a month for the support staff, that he stayed late on Fridays to do system updates so they wouldn't disrupt anyone's work, that he had this habit of humming while he worked, usually old jazz standards, and that he was completely unself-conscious about it. I also learned that I wasn't the only person who'd noticed him. Janet from accounting mentioned how helpful he was. Tom from sales said Marcus had saved his ass more times than he could count. But none of them talked about him the way I thought about him. None of them seemed to feel this pull I felt, this wanting to know everything about him. The second time I called IT, it was for something minor, a software update that wouldn't install. I could have probably figured it out myself with a quick Google search, but I didn't. I submitted a ticket and felt guilty about it for maybe 30 seconds before Marcus appeared at my desk again. He remembered me. Not just my name, but details from our last conversation. He asked how the presentation had gone, the one I'd been panicking about. I was so surprised that he'd remembered I almost forgot to answer. We ended up talking for 20 minutes while he worked, and I learned that he was taking night classes in cybersecurity, that he had a cat named Algorithm, and that he'd moved here from Seattle 2 years ago for a fresh start. I wanted to ask what he was starting fresh from, but that felt too personal. Instead, I asked about Seattle, and his whole face lit up talking about the coffee culture and the music scene. He missed it, I could tell, but there was something about the way he talked about this city that made me think he was building something here, something that mattered to him. When he finished with my computer, he did that thing again where he didn't just leave. He asked if I liked jazz because there was this small venue downtown that had live shows on Thursday nights. It was casual the way he said it. Not quite an invitation, but not an invitation either. I said I'd never really gotten into jazz, but I'd been wanting to explore it. He wrote down the name of the venue on a Post-it note, and I still have that Post-it tucked into my desk drawer. I didn't go that Thursday. I chickened out. I told myself it wasn't actually an invitation, that he was just being friendly, that I was reading into things. But I thought about it. I thought about it so much that I barely slept. The third time I called IT was 2 weeks later, and this time I didn't even pretend it was urgent. My keyboard was sticking on the space bar. Could have lived with it, should have lived with it. But I wanted to see him again. I wanted to hear his voice and watch his hands move across the keyboard and maybe find the courage to actually have a real conversation. Marcus came up, and this time he seemed happy to see me. Not just polite professional happy, but genuinely pleased. He fixed the keyboard in about 3 minutes, which should have been embarrassing, but then he pulled up the spare chair and asked if I had a minute. My heart just about exploded. Of course I had a minute. I had all the minutes in the world for him. He told me he'd gone to that jazz venue the previous Thursday. He said he'd thought about inviting me directly, but hadn't wanted to overstep professional boundaries. Then he paused, and in that pause was everything I'd been hoping for and terrified of. He asked if I'd want to go with him next week. As friends, he added quickly, just 2 people who work in the same building appreciating music together. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We exchanged phone numbers, actual personal phone numbers, not just work extensions. He saved my contact with a little music note emoji, and I watched him do it. This small gesture that felt enormous. That week was the longest of my life. I changed my outfit 4 times before Thursday. I got to the venue early and then walked around the block twice so I wouldn't seem too eager. When I finally went in, Marcus was already there, sitting at a small table near the stage. He'd saved me a seat. He'd ordered me a drink based on what he'd guessed I might like. He'd gotten it exactly right. The music was beautiful, but I barely heard it. I was too aware of Marcus sitting next to me, his knee occasionally brushing against mine in the cramped space. During the second set, he leaned over to explain something about the trumpet player's technique, his mouth close to my ear so I could hear over the music. I felt his breath on my neck and thought I might actually pass out. When the show ended, we walked out into the cool night air, and neither of us wanted it to be over. We ended up at a diner, one of those 24-hour places with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like it's been sitting since yesterday. We stayed until 2 in the morning, talking about everything. His parents, who still lived in Seattle and called him every Sunday. My complicated relationship with my family. His love of old movies. My secret dream of learning to paint. We talked until the words ran out, and then we just sat there, comfortable in the silence. He drove me home, and at my door there was this moment, this crystalline moment where we both knew something was shifting. He didn't kiss me. He just squeezed my hand and said he'd had the best time he'd had in months. I watched him drive away, and then I went inside and couldn't sleep because my whole body was buzzing with possibility. After that, things changed. Not at work, where we kept things professional, but in the spaces between. Text messages that started about music recommendations and evolved into good morning greetings and good night thoughts. Lunch breaks that we'd time to overlap. Eating sandwiches in the courtyard and talking about our days. More Thursday nights at the jazz venue, sitting closer each time until it felt natural for his arm to rest along the back of my chair. And my computer issues, they became more frequent, not always real, but sometimes. And Marcus, I think he knew that half the time my problems were just excuses to have him near, because he started taking longer on each visit. What should have been 5-minute fixes stretched to 20, then 30. He'd finish the actual work and then find reasons to stay. teaching me keyboard shortcuts I'd never use, explaining security protocols in detail. Once, he spent 45 minutes showing me how to optimize my startup programs, and we both knew it was completely unnecessary. My coworkers started joking about it. Having computer problems again? They'd ask with knowing smiles. I didn't care. Let them think what they wanted. Those moments with Marcus at my desk, his presence warm and solid beside me, his voice low so only I could hear, they were becoming the best parts of my day. It was during one of these extended visits that things finally shifted completely. I'd called about a printer connection issue, something that actually was legitimate for once. Marcus came up, and as he was working, I asked him about his classes. He'd just finished a major exam, and I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. Without thinking, I touched his shoulder, just a brief gesture of support, but he went still under my hand. He turned to look at me, and the expression on his face was so open, so vulnerable that I forgot how to breathe. He said my name, just my name, but the way he said it held everything we'd been dancing around for months. He asked if I knew why he always took so long on my tickets. I shook my head, even though I did know I'd known for weeks. He said it was because being near me was the best part of his day, that he'd started looking forward to my tickets like other people looked forward to weekends, that he knew it was probably inappropriate given that we worked together, but he couldn't help it. I should have been smooth. I should have had the perfect response ready. Instead, I just told him the truth, that half my computer problems weren't real, that I'd been making excuses to see him, that I'd been falling for him since that first day in March, when he'd fixed my blue screen and made me feel like I mattered. The smile that spread across his face was worth every awkward moment, every anxious night, every time I doubted myself. He asked if I'd want to get dinner with him that weekend. Not as co-workers, not as friends, but as something more, something real. I said yes. Obviously, I said yes. That weekend became the first of many. Dinners turned into movies, turned into long walks through the city. We learned each other's rhythms and quirks. How he was grumpy before his first coffee. How I needed quiet time after social events to recharge. The way he'd absently reach for my hand when we walked. How I'd lean into him without thinking, drawn to his warmth. We kept things quiet at work for a while. Not secretive, but private. It felt precious, this thing between us, something to protect and nurture before exposing it to office gossip and speculation. But people figured it out anyway. It's hard to hide the way you look at someone when they mean everything. Marcus still responds to my IT tickets. He still comes to my desk when I have problems. And yes, he still takes twice as long as necessary. And no, I don't complain. Because those moments with him beside me, his presence steady and sure, they're a reminder of how this started, how something as mundane as a computer crash led to something extraordinary. Last week, he was fixing a legitimate issue with my email client, something that was actually affecting my work. When he finished, he didn't leave right away. He never does. He turned to me and said that in all his years in IT, he'd never been so grateful for technical difficulties, that every ticket I'd submitted, real or invented, had been a gift, a chance to be near me, a reason to stay a little longer. I told him he didn't need reasons anymore, that he could stay as long as he wanted, tickets or no tickets. He smiled, that smile that still makes my heart race, and kissed my forehead right there at my desk. Professional boundaries be damned. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, from crashed computers and frozen screens, from having the courage to call for help and the patience to let something develop naturally, from someone who takes their time, who doesn't rush, who makes you feel like every moment matters. So, yeah, the IT guy takes twice as long on my computer, and I wouldn't have it any other way.